A very good morning, everyone. I am Asmita and I welcome you all on behalf of Jamshedpur Management Association. In our bake session, that is business acumen and knowledge by experts, today we are very happy to welcome Professor Sunil Kumar Sarangi. Professor Sarangi is currently teaching communication and leadership at XLRI Jamshedpur. For 4 years now, he has been the program director of Basic Leadership Skills, the flagship management development program of XLRI. He has over 18 years of corporate and academic experience. He holds a master's degree in arts in English language and literature as a university gold medalist, and he holds an international certificate in executive education and training. His area of research is language, brand, and neuro-communication. So far, he has taught and trained more than 300 executives, entrepreneurs from across industry and the government. Today, Professor will speak about the leadership in the time of crisis, a psychological perspective. The session will continue for about 70 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of Q&A. With this, I welcome Professor Sunil Kumar Sarangi. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Really happy. I'm delighted to be back with you. I would say, as they say, crisis reveals character, and for leaders, it's extremely important. The leadership character is always revealed during crisis, and crisis is an opportunity. Here, I'm reminded of one of the finest statements by Leonard Malornov, the quantum physicist who spoke a lot about human behavior. What he says is, to gain a true understanding of human experience, human knowledge, and behavior, we must understand both our unconscious and our conscious selves and how they interact with each other. Our brain works most of the times in a subliminal state, yet it influences our conscious and our unconscious behavior. It also happens with others, and that's the fundamental way how we see ourselves and how we see others, and we attach meaning and others attach meaning to their own self. And with this, I'll start. What are the do's and don'ts of leadership during leadership in crisis? Then I'll talk about the frameworks and tools, and finally I would talk about some of the findings and most important findings, and I'll be also touching upon the mental models. Let's get started. First of all, I'll touch upon the leadership language. What language should a leader be resorting to during the time of crisis? And I know when I talk about crisis, all of you are definitely thinking, or rather, you can't help but think about the pandemic that all of us experiencing. So that's absolutely fine. When I say crisis, please remember, I will not be using the word pandemic, lest I might be conjuring up the images of a pandemic. I would constantly be saying crisis, and crisis is a broad metaphor here, which includes the current pandemic that you and I are experiencing. This is very, very important on the part of a leader, to constantly be sending message of how well he or she understands the people that he or she works with. That's extremely important, and that has to be expressed quite explicitly in the language that he or she instructs, guides, decides, and interacts and communicates with his followers. And this is very, very important, friends. Safety, sense of safety is extremely important. So constantly we need to be telling people that we are doing everything possible under our power to ensure that all of you are safe, because a sense of safety brings the best. It unravels, it taps into the creativity, it taps into the best possible, infinite possibility of human brain. So constantly telling people that they're safe is vital, is important. This is very important. When you say that you are all being remembered, what essentially you're saying, that you are essentially not disconnected. When I'm saying you are remembered, I'm ensuring that we all, when I'm saying you are networked, I'm constantly telling you that we are maybe distant. We may not be able to see each other but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not remembering you. I'm remembering you. I'm socially connected with you, which is extremely important. Why I'm saying this? In a recent research article, it was categorically stated, when you say you are remembered, you are in a way fighting that statement that we are all socially connected. We are social animals. We extremely feel connected when we are socially connected. So with the concept of social distancing being in place, constantly you're saying you are remembered will not only annihilate, not only obliterate, not only in a way refutes the very human desire, but also it solidifies your image as a leader, which is extremely important. Then next comes a statement of assurance. A statement of assurance from a leader is very, very important, because that assurance, however flawed it might be, I repeat, however flawed it might be, will give a sense of things, a sense of belonging, and a sense of, again, reinforce a safety, which is very important. And it should be spelled out in the best possible understandable language, concise, precise, and short language. The next, of course, facts need to be spelled out, friends. This is extremely important. When the leader says these are facts before me, however many facts that he or she has got, spelling those facts out to the audience establishes trust, credibility, which is extremely important all the time, but especially during the time of crisis. Most importantly, the leader has to spell out the plan that he or she has under her sleeve. Extremely important. This is the plan. When you give, this is the plan, you are anyway kind of avoiding, fighting a sense of ambiguity, because uncertainty and ambiguity are two key words that I constantly will be referring to. And I'll also talk about a little bit of psychology or neuroscience of uncertainty and ambiguity throughout my conversation. So please bear with me. I would try to minimize the usage of academic language, but I would try to really bring it down to the level of our conversation. So if you find anything which is beyond your dictionary, I would really request you to put that question online or offline, and I'm sure we'll have a terrific conversation around that. This is extremely important, the 7th step. A constant belief in something good coming out of this crisis is not only goes towards fulfilling the desire to see something good coming out, but also neuroscientifically, neurochemically, you are attuning the brains of others. You are attuning the brain of yours to have all the works directed towards that objective, that good has to come out, good will come out. And when you say that, it is not in the realm of spirituality, friends, it is in the realm of science. When you do that, all your, as I say, neurons that fire together, wire together. You are constantly channelizing the neurons to work towards that good coming out, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and which is extremely important, friends. Last but definitely not least, a constant reference to the fact that you are loved, you're cared for, you're wanted, and you are that you are connected. This has to be spelled out again in words, in language, and genuine language. I'm going to now talk about a few things, friends, which we during leadership or few leaders do, and that's exactly what we should not be doing. You should not be doing. None of the leaders should be doing. When the crisis, you see a crisis unfolding, the last thing that you should and I should be doing is waiting for additional information. And we should never ever downplay, hide the bad news or withhold facts, which is extremely important, friends. And this is what we do. Once we realize the crisis unfolds, we get into an act which is almost like defending our action, defending our steps, and of course defending what we've been doing. And we go all out. We take extra care in defending and explaining all those elements. That's exactly what we shouldn't be doing. And most importantly, when we take a particular decision, as cognitive bias called the sunk cost fallacies tells us, we stay the course. And this is exactly what the research and psychology, neuroscience tells us. Great leaders during crisis time, they don't do. You should not do, I should not do, because all of us are leader in our individual rights. Staying the course means not being open to feedback, not being open to the thing that I can be wrong, not being open to change the course, the direction of our course, which is extremely counterintuitive. It doesn't work. What works instead of waiting for additional information is acting with urgency. And that sense of urgency, as we saw in some of the political leaders, I'll not get into telling you which political leader did what. That's for you to go back and check. But some of the political leaders, finest political leaders and state leaders, and of course business leaders do. What they do is they act with tremendous urgency in their language and also in their behavior, and they start interacting, communicating that urgency to the people they work with. This is extremely important, friends. Transparency is very, very important. It's core, because if I get seen not to be transparent, if you get seen not to be transparent, even if that's not your desire, but if you're seen not to be transparent, somewhere the trust that should exist between you and the people who you work with will start eroding. Please be careful about maintaining and communicating with total transparency. Very, very important, friends. First of all, taking responsibility for all the action, and most importantly, focusing on solution, focusing on problem solving, rather than talking about things which are not current, talking about things which are not directly connected with solving the problem. And please remember, last but definitely not least, when it comes to taking responsibility, you as a leader, I as a leader, we constantly need to be telling I, we, not in passive language. It has to be in active language. And very, very important, friends. In fact, during crisis, they say the engagement, the communication, the frequency with which you communicate as a leader should be manifold, should be far more than probably triple times that you do. So if you update your colleagues, if you update your people, let's say once a week's time, you should be doing it probably now, what, thrice a week or 4 times a week. So the engagement through constant and frequent updating is extremely important. And that's one thing which would, in a way, take care of not staying the course, but changing the course and appearing flexible, malleable, which is extremely important for an effective leader during the time of crisis. And I would now tell you why, friends, why safety. I'll go back to safety. Why constantly telling people they're safe is extremely important. And I don't want to make it extremely academic. At the same time, since I'm talking to leaders, budding leaders, practicing leaders, I'm pretty confident and conscious that I have the liberty of telling you a few of the findings from neuroscience. Feeling threatened is something which blocks our prefrontal neocortex, which is our executive brain, the brain, that part of the brain which is responsible for all creativity, for all rationality. And that gets blocked when we don't feel safe. We need to feel safe. We need to feel rewarded. We need to feel confident. And that's when we are at our best. And we not only at our best, but also we become more creative. We become part of the problem solving team, and we become absolutely.
We have also prepared some list.
As a leader, this is extremely important. This is extremely important. Sending instructions. Very, very important, friends. Sending instruction, interacting with people, and communicating your decisions. It should not, mind you, it should not demean anyone. It should not reduce anybody's status, position, because by doing that, you are playing with the neuroscientific finding that you are not giving the best for the prefrontal neocortex, the executive brain, to function. So please remember, that's extremely important, not to let people feel let down in terms of their status, in terms of their position. Very, very important. Of course, this is very important. Why you must appreciate the concern, the contribution, and of course, their involvement in the work that you are doing during the time of crisis. Because when you do that, you are literally unraveling the best in them, and you are neuroscientifically pushing them, motivating them to not only take part, but go beyond the boundary of the line of the call of duty and give their best. Very important, friends. Sense of certainty is all that we need. You need, I need, everybody else needs in this world. Nobody knows what would happen tomorrow, but we know people are working hard at it. The scientists, the business community, the state leader, every single person, the health worker, every single individual is working. And now let's take it straight into the heart of your organization. Be it the Tata main hospital, the Selco hospital, or Tata Steel. I'm sure that's exactly what all the are engaged in doing. They're engaged in communicating, creating a sense of certainty for all of you to function, for all of us to function. And why it is important? This is the ones that I have written in red is the scientific finding. So don't look at it with heart and soul, but look at the one down below in blue with heart and soul, which is very important. Why it is important? When you reduce into chunks instructions your
toxic
guidance,
solids, we have
your
cement dust.
decisions into chunks. It gives a sense of certainty. It encourages them to really be flexible, resilient, and you would be, in a way, you would be tapping into the best of the people that you work with. So please remember, giving a sense of certainty, however small it is extremely imperative for leaders during the time of crisis. This is another extension of certainty, friends, a sense of predictability. As I have often been telling some of my students and some of the executives that I've had the opportunity of interacting with in my life, I tell them how important it is for leaders to give a sound predictable. It's extremely important. It's an unpredictable world all the time. It is scientifically, it is not possible to be predictable, but within your limited capacity, you need to be giving, you need to be passing on information, instruction, and most importantly, all your interactions and conversations as a leader must be striking hard to sound predictable as far as possible, because a sense of predictability is a reward in itself. It again makes people feel safe, and thereby it pushes people to work from their prefrontal neocortex, or the executive brain, which is the most evolved part of the brain. That's the brain that you are using now. That's the part of the brain that I'm using now when we are trying to be at our best. So, and by giving a sense of direction, a sense of predictability, you are literally tapping into the best brain that he or she possesses. So please be predictable as far as possible in all your dealings as a leader during time of crisis, which is extremely important. Yes, friends, autonomy. Again, a sense of autonomy, psychology and neuroscience both have come together. They've conversed together to tell all of us that extending a sense of autonomy on the part of a leader is extremely important. And one of the ways that he or she can probably extend a sense of autonomy by reducing micromanaging, by reducing the act of micromanagement, by doing more of delegating. Thereby, again, neuroscientifically, during time of crisis, a leader actually helps people perform their best, do their best. So it is very, very important for all of us, friends, to remember that extending a sense of autonomy to the people that we work with is very, very important, extremely important. Now my question is, yes, is there a particular method, tool, framework that works during crisis, during pandemic, during the time of difficulty? My answer would be, or nobody's answer, nobody can answer with an affirmative. The answer is definitely no, but there are best ways that we can work. And one of the ways that we can work by showing our best is harmonizing. And this is a little bit of psychology, friends. This is from Carl Gustav Jung, one of the pioneers of psychology, study of psychology, and he talks about harmonizing the masculine me and the feminine me. And he talks about two concepts called Anima and Animus. Anima is essentially the tenderness, the patience, and the empathy that probably we expect from a mother, from a lady, from a female. And what Animus essentially says is the masculine me. The masculine me, when I say masculine me, little bit of ruthlessness, little bit of result oriented, little bit of being centric on target all the time. So there has to be a wonderful admixture of both, and a middle path is extremely important. And how do we nurture Anima? And this is essentially for all the I know it is a gendered approach, which I should not, but again, the study of psychology has pushed me to share these details with you, because during time of crisis, they are extremely important, friends. And how do we nurture this wonderful feminine strength in me? For all the friends who, the men here, I would say yes, do that. An act of active listening with concern, with empathy is very, very important. It should not only be in your mind, in your heart, but it should also get reflected in the gesture that all of us adopt. Very, very important, friends. Do we nurture in our life? It could be a plant, it could be a paper, It could be a life, it could be a concept, it could be an idea. Do we nurture? If we don't, then probably we should be doing a little bit more, because that would bring out the best of the anima that Carl Gustav Jung so powerfully has been telling us to do. Extremely important, friends, being thoughtful, being compassionate, and most importantly, being considerate. And I'm sure all of you are doing it, but just do that consciously a little bit more so that it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it becomes the new you, and it becomes a huge strength going forward for you, which is tried and tested, and you would be at your best. Should there be a crisis next? God forbid, there should be. But this is definitely not the last time that we are experiencing the pandemic in our lifetime. There'll be many more crises. There'll be probably many more pandemics. God forbid, there shouldn't be any. But if there'll be one, then these are the things that would really help you be your best. Of course, this is a time when all of us are kind of, in a way, a glorious incarceration. We are locked up, safely ensconced in our homes, doing what we are expected to do. This is the time for us to get into all these elements. A little bit of music, poetry, of course, dance are very important, because in a way they would neuroscientifically make us more malleable to face the crisis and be an effective leader. Now let's get into the do's and the methods of having animus, the best of animus. And this is for the ladies that I'm speaking with now, all our friends, the ladies. I'm sure the gentlemen do it enough and often, for which they have been excoriated, but the ladies, please do it. And I'm sure you are doing it already. If you're not doing it, do it a little more. Being assertive, and most importantly, very important, take on those roles and assignments. And mind you, when I say role and position, it doesn't come with an official position. It comes with a self-styled position, a self-defined role, which helps you express authority, which helps you express your dominance, positive dominance. Please do that. Something very new, something that you haven't done before, but do it. That's extremely important. Again, take a new leadership role. It doesn't have to be really depending on your institution, your organization giving you a chance or not giving a chance. Do it in your individual capacity, because that would help you explore the latent best that you have, all of you have in you. So please do that. Reading non-fiction has been one of the most important findings. As to why? Because when you read non-fiction, which is dry, and it talks about the sad reality of life, you become closer to the animus, you become closer to the men that we are, and that in a way would condition your mind a lot better to face the brutal, tough challenges of this brutal, tough world. So please get into the habit of reading non-fiction. If you're not reading, please start reading. If you're reading, you're doing fine. Rather than depending on brothers, friends, husbands, fathers, please be a little more self-sufficient, self-reliant. Again, that would give you the strength that Carl Gustav Jung is saying that you must have to be a complete leader. It is not about only having the best of a man, but the best of a woman are extremely important, and in right combination, moderation, are extremely important during the time of crisis. Animus and anima. Now, last but definitely not the least, these are extremely important, friends. The ladies in my audience now, please, it sounds bizarre. Some of you might be doing it, but if you aren't doing it, please start doing it. This is extremely important. This will, in a way, orient you towards tougher times ahead, better times ahead, and this will orient you to better and bigger positions that you deserve to have and handle in the days and months to come. So please start doing it. Fixing a car, and fixing your electrical appliances, fixing things that you probably haven't done before. Try doing it now. Next is, friends, is there a mental model? There are many. There are many mental models that we have been using. One of the things, and this is a quote that I'm taking, this is a statement that probably one of the finest scientists of 20th century, Richard Feynman, the quantum physicist, used to say, if you want to really face new challenges of life, you must have a set of new mental models, because we always rely on mental models. During crisis, what all of us are thinking, oh my goodness, will there be a salary cut? Will there be a cut in my benefits and my perks? Will I not be able to ride my car the way I used to? So what happens here is we are all getting incarcerated. We are becoming prisoners of the mental models that we have built over a period of time, that probably these are the things that go along with being successful. These are the things that go along with being effective, being active. Probably this time has come. The old worldview that has dominated our thinking needs to be replaced by new mental models. And those of you who would be wondering what this man is talking about, raving and ranting about mental models, please stay in touch. I would be sharing beyond this conversation. I will be sharing with you why we need to retool our minds with new mental models, and which are very, very critical, because that would impact the way we think about today and tomorrow, and how we become productive, creative, and we become absolutely successful, even during a horrifyingly horrendous pandemic called COVID-19. Friends, I would now take you a little towards mindfulness. Those of you who've already been doing it are doing really well. I would share one or two lines of scientific findings of mindfulness. This is extremely important. We got to be mindful. And those of you would be wondering what mindfulness, I would request you, those of you who know meditation and mindfulness, I'm sure you know. Those of you who don't know, please go ahead and read a little bit about mindfulness. Mindfulness, why mindfulness? It helps us regulate ourselves. It helps us be focused. It helps us converge our attention, and it helps us definitely become more self-aware, which is very, very important. ACC, which is called anterior cingulate cortex of our brain, which is associated with attention. Friends, please remember, when we get into mindfulness, we get into the act of mindfulness, we get into that. What mindfulness is essentially the most immediate or important definition of mindfulness being without being judgmental, accepting the emotions that all of us experience without being judgmental. When I don't tag a particular emotion to a particular word to the emotion that I'm experiencing, then probably I'm inching towards mindfulness. And that's exactly what we should all be doing. And why? Because the anterior cingulate cortex part of our brain, which is ACC, that region of our brain, which is connected with attention, and neuroscience has found out with mindfulness meditation, we become extremely, extremely attentive. We become creative. We become the best that we are. Again, friends, I'll not get into a lot of this science. Very important, friends. Mindfulness would nurture an extremely healthy mind, and of course, impacts all of our collective well-being. This is, in fact, one of my most favorite findings from my own personal research. What is liquid knowledge, friends? Liquid knowledge is, again, not binding leaders, not binding themselves in the time of crisis into the categories. Knowledge, understanding, concepts, ideas, strengths, intelligences should not be tagged alongside biology, economics, physics, philosophy, mathematics, engineering, technology. In real world, they rarely are divided into really, really clearly defined categories. The categories don't exist in real world. In real world, the great leaders are absolutely free from these categories. They don't look at life through the lenses that probably our education, probably our understanding, our training has created. So get beyond the defined borders that has guided you, that has guided me, that has guided all the leaders who are here now. Get outside the border and freely move into each other's territory and create that liquid understanding, intelligence, and knowledge. And that would give you a robust mental model to function in a world which is extremely uncertain, which is extremely undefinable. Very, very important, friends. Develop the liquid knowledge, probably reading something which doesn't pertain to your interest, which doesn't pertain to the function that you're working in. And that way you would be extremely able, you would be extremely should I say, trained, and most importantly, you'd be malleable. You'd be extremely effective during the time of crisis and otherwise. Last but not least, friends, what I've been telling you, probably I'm committing the same mistake of creating a category by giving you tools, while at the same time telling you not to depend on tools. So I'm kind of putting myself, as all of you need to be also as leaders during the time of crisis, get into a meta-analysis, get into a mode which is called being self-critical. All the wisdom that we have had so far in the world, it cannot be confined to a little academic department. And Charlie Munger famously said, that's what I thought is very, very imperative for us to be reminded of during the time of pandemic and crisis. Last but not least, friends, I have carefully culled out this 12 strategies. These are from two wonderful neuroscientists and who practice neuroscience and also teach management science, Newberg and Waldman, Mark Waldman and Andrew Newberg. What they say is during the time of crisis, a leader must have these 12 strategies. An attitude which is relaxed, and it should reflect in the leader's behavior, in the leader's language, and of course, in the leader's body language. The leader should be absolutely present during an interaction, during a conversation, because that would give a tremendous neuroscientific strength to the followers, to the people who work with the leader, and thereby it leads to a tremendous bonding with the leader, which is extremely important. Cultivating inner silence, friends. Again, this is profound. I would be probably having this conversation offline with those of you, but allow me to just stay here. I'm sure all of you understand what I mean by inner silence, which is very, very important. Increasing our positive mindset. How do we do that, friends? By really switching off our minds mostly to anxiety, to negative emotions that we all of us experience. So having a carefully crafted positive mindset would actually strengthen the leader in all of you, the leader in all of us. So please remember, the more you culture, you increase a positive mindset, the more the leadership qualities would be reflected in all of you. Next is, of course, reflecting on the profound values, the inner values, the most important values, the deepest values that you and I have nurtured in our life. Constantly reflecting would give us a lot of strength, and thereby it would hone, it would make us better prepared to deal with crisis, to deal with difficulties in life. Very, very important, friends. Accessing pleasant memories. This is what I keep talking about all the time. This is probably one of the most favorite, should I say, methods as far as my understanding goes about these 12 strategies. What do I mean by accessing pleasant memories? This is exactly what science tells us. When we are in crisis, we normally don't access pleasant memories. A pleasant memory could be having read a beautiful poem long time ago, having met a wonderful friend that I had not met for years, and the positive emotion it stirred in me, having seen probably a great, wonderful movie that I look forward to seeing, and the emotion, the positive emotion that it stirred. So these are the ways that you can and I can access pleasant memories, thereby staying positive, thereby making our brain all the time positive, which would help us fight this pandemic, this crisis, as an effective, powerful leader. The next, of course, is observing these things in our nonverbal cues. And now I would actually kind of say that with not with a lot of emphasis, because when it is all about working from home, at times not being able to see each other, but however small that you get to see each other in small ways, please remember a very powerful positive body language cue befitting these emotions that I have already talked about, befitting these methods that I've talked about, are extremely important, and that would actually infuse a lot of positive confidence in the people that you're leading, the people that you're working with. Otherwise, probably there'll be a disconnect. Of course, I talked about expressing appreciation, why it is important. The next, of course, is friends, the next the next four are extremely important. As a leader, I know during time of crisis, we tend to not have our mind absolutely be calm, but have your mind be calm, your heart be calm, and speak warmly as far as possible, speak slowly, speak briefly, and most importantly, listen to the people that you're leading extremely deeply. And I should add and say with a lot of empathy, understanding, and care. And thereby, I would say we've come to the end of my interaction, friends. I would finally be humble in telling all of you that though scientists generally agree that nothing is 100%, whether what Newton said, whether what Einstein said, whether what Robert Gallo has done or said, the greatest, one of the finest immunologists now who is fighting, and the scores of people who are fighting, all of them would agree nothing is 100% correct. So the real test of knowledge lies not in it being absolutely true, friends, but its utility. And that's what I would say, and I would end my one-sided conversation with all of you. Now I'll be open for question and answer, and let's get started. Thank you, friends.
Professor, this side, Srinivas Kasturi, can we get this presentation, whatever you have shown here?
Can you be a little louder? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Can you be a little louder, please?
Can we get this presentation, whatever you have shown here?
Who am I talking with? May I know who I'm talking with, please?
Srinivas Kasturi.
Oh, Srinivas. Hi, Srinivas. Oh, yes. You know what? There'll be a kind of consulting fee that I'll charge for sharing this presentation. I'll be sharing this presentation. I'll be sharing, of course. I'm a teacher. I would love to share.
Thank you, Professor. It was very nice.
You're welcome.
Hello. Professor Sarangi.
Hello, yeah, Sushil Oja here.
Friends,
I have a question.
Just a second. There's a friend of ours who says that Anima and Anima seems gender biased. Yes, I said that. I think you're right. It is a little gender biased, but it doesn't talk about any gender being special, any gender being superior to the other one. It puts both the gender on equal level, thereby saying both the genders have something in them which are extremely important for a leader to have. As Carl Gustav Jung has said, I would, as a teacher, I would humbly look at it as not as a framework of a gendered framework, but I would say probably getting the best out of the both. So that would be my my take as a teacher, as a researcher.
But sir, it was me. It was Sonali. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, it was me who wrote this, because I find that you have two separate slides with two different characteristics for each of them, and I believe that both the genders are sharing equal things. I mean,
Absolutely.
men are also caring and like taking care of others, and women are also having leadership position. It is nothing new to us. So I don't feel that like it is just an app that in times of crisis we talk about different genders.
I would say, I would put it very differently. Neither. I'm very conscious of what I said, and as a teacher, I'm very conscious of my words, and I'm very conscious of what I'm using. I fully agree with you. There is no science behind it, but just that, as psychology has been stating, and these are some of the finest principles, though they are getting challenged, but nowhere even is Carl Gustav Jung referring to any particular gender being superior. They're saying both the genders have something in them. If they are to merge together, that would be a brilliant combination for a leader to have. That's all he's saying, and that's all I would fully agree with. At the same time, I agree with you. I never said, neither will I ever say that any gender being superior to the other gender. Definitely you're right, and that's not what psychology is saying, and that's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, let's look at both the genders, even if we have to look at it in a gendered language. Let's look at both the genders and get the strengths from both the genders and merge together to be an effective leader. That's all I'm saying, Ms. Sonali.
Yeah, that's a better way to put, because I believe now these days both of us are reading fiction and non-fiction. So I
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, my question is Sushil Oja here. My question is, first of all, thanks for giving the 360-degree, I will say, perspective on leadership. Now, my question is there, could you throw some light on symptoms of leadership crisis? Okay, symptoms of leadership crisis, or how we diagnose leadership crisis in earlier stage.
I'm sorry, can you just rephrase your question, please? I don't quite latch onto what you're saying, symptoms of leadership crisis. Can you please rephrase? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
My question is, we have gone through your presentation where you have talked about different perspectives of leadership. So with this context, my question is, could you throw some light on symptoms of leadership crisis, or
wonderful, I got it.
Stage diagnosis?
Yes. So a leadership crisis, see, these are the indicators. As a leader, when do I see the symptoms coming to the fore? When I see it is not certainty. See, up until probably the outbreak of, I really am afraid I didn't want to talk about COVID-19 that all of you have been hearing a number of times to a sickening extent, but somehow I keep referring to that because that's the one thing that we all latch on to. Let's talk about the day when we knew that our country is going to be in the absolutely will be in the grip of this crisis. So what happened? Suddenly this sense of certainty was replaced by uncertainty. Suddenly the sense of safety was replaced by anxiety. Suddenly the sense of, should I say, predictability was replaced by unpredictability. So I would say when you see these three things, anxiety, unpredictability, and most importantly, uncertainty, then you as a leader, these are the, I should say, the litmus test for you to realize, no, this is the time, the crisis is about to come, about to strike, and let me get into the act of finding a solution. So these are the three things that you should be looking out for, or anyone should be looking out for.
Okay, thank you.
Hello,
Yes.
Professor Sarangi. Good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
I'm Anupam Tripathi, and it's been a real pleasure listening to you after such a long time.
Can you speak a little louder? I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Can you speak a little louder, please?
Good afternoon, Professor Sarangi. I'm Anupam Tripathi. Am I
Yes,
audible?
Anupam.
I'm saying thank you for this wonderful presentation. And so when you were speaking about effective communication,
Anupam, I'm afraid I can't hear you, Anupam. I can't hear you. You're not audible to the extent that I can understand.
Is it better now?
Can you post your question? I would look at the question and I would answer if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. I will do that.
Meanwhile, if anybody else has any questions, please go ahead.
Yes, friends, any other question that you have, please shoot me the questions, please. Either you send them in your chat box or you can ask. Just that Anupam was not audible, so I feel sorry. Anupam, yes. Oh, okay. Here our friend Anupam Tripathi is asking if there is a particular list of recommended reading. As a teacher, you know, this is one question I love to answer. And the only thing is that you would be really cursing me to give you a list of reading, which I will, because this is not 1 or 2 or 3 books. This is an exhaustive list that I'll be sharing with all of you. So is that clear? Is that okay with you, Anupam?
Thank you very much, Professor.
Yes, if you think something that you need to start with, probably I would say there are scores, but if you need to start with, just start with something which is freely available. The HBR issues that are available on the net. So start and read only the recent HBR articles, which are extensively talking about and covering the crisis that you and I are talking about. In fact, that has been one of my reference points, the HBR findings, apart from other findings. So please read those things. Having said that, I would definitely, through our common friends, the organizers of this conversation, I would share the list with all of you, should you need it.
Sir, in between during this training program, in one of the slide I have seen that you have to cultivate your inner calmness. Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, what I meant by cultivating the inner strength, inner calmness is all about, friends, crisis. It is quite natural that all of us would be anxious. All of us would tend to be on the edge, and thereby we would. What happens here is there's a concept called the locus of control. A locus of control is essentially when I think the locus of control lies inside me, as opposed to the locus of control lies outside. During a time of crisis, we tend to lose this locus of control, and thereby the position of the control, we would tend to feel that it is outside me, and thereby that would lead to the loss of focus, the loss of calmness. So the more I always feel that I as an individual, I'm totally in command of my life, I'm totally in command of what I do, I'm totally in command of my behavior. So thereby I'm orienting myself towards cultivating this inner strength, this inner calmness, and all my actions, my behavior, my decisions that I'll be taking as a leader would be tremendously and positively impacted by this small tiny aspects of my thought, which is essentially not thinking that the locus of control lies beyond me, but locus of control lies inside me.
It is somewhat believing in ourselves.
Yes, kind of bordering on that. It's almost, yes. There's a friend of ours, and the question is whether I could talk about a little more about the mental models. Yes, friends. How do I tell you? There's something called the first principle. What I mean by first principle, there's something called probably the biggest mental model is the mental model that all of you need to go and look up, as called the Occams Razor. What do you mean by OCCAM apostrophe S, Occams Razor? What I mean by Occams Razor is probably if there is a complex problem that we can't make sense of, we tend to have an answer to the complex problem by an equally corresponding complex solution. But please remember, however complex a problem may be, a difficulty may be, the solution you as a leader must go for is the one which has got the least number of nuts and bolts in it, which is probably the simplest to define solution. So that's called Occam's Razor. So this is like a profoundly important mental model. Hanlon's Razor, Occam's Razor. So these are Hanlon's Razor. We as leaders, we are quick to always, and this is my favorite as a teacher and as teacher of leadership, as a trainer of leadership, or rather as a learner of leadership, I always tell myself, can I do that? Most often we fall prey to our own cognitive biases. And one of the cognitive biases makes us attribute always an error to something as heinous as malice in others. So what I would say, what Hanlon's Razor, the great mental model, is saying, friends, Hanlon's Razor says, please don't attribute to malice which can be explained away by stupidity of others. So that's a great mental model that you and I can have as leaders, and especially when we're out to fight a crisis, these are extremely important mental models that would help us tide over this crisis, friends.
Hello, Prof.
Friends, there's an interesting question that has come our way. The question is, would there be a difference in the way the leadership is practiced, the leadership behavior post and pre-COVID-19? To this, my answer is yes, definitely yes. That's the reason why I have been constantly harping on installing the new mental models in our brain, friends. What I mean by mental models, a mental model could be something like demand supply. A mental model in economics, we talk about many things. We talk about game theory, how it impacts our behavior, how it impacts, negotiates our relationship. We talk about, in psychology, we talk about conditioning, we talk about operant conditioning, we talk about many things, we talk about motivation. So all these are guided by the mental models. And of course, we talk about, this is my personal favorite, one of the oldest and probably most classical, Maslow's need hierarchy theory. So all those mental models, because all the actions, the behavior, the decisions, the conversations that we have as leaders are practically based on this mental models, and we operate out of our unconscious state when we rely on these mental models. So what I would say in response to this wonderful question that has been asked by Samiksha Saxena, yes, this way, the way we are looking at life would definitely, if not today, tomorrow, in the years to come, it would change. It would change. I don't know what, but definitely it would change. We are definitely seeing an absolute change in the behavior of or the trends of leadership that all these years that we were trying to learn and understand, that would definitely undergo a change.
Professor, myself Samiksha. So I have asked this question. So there has been a lot of readings which we have been receiving these days on the trends and behavior with pre and post COVID world. So are there any emerging trends in these leadership behaviors? So this was my question.
I'm afraid, lady, there is none. There is none. Not that there is none, but yes, the only thing that the trend is that please don't rely on the mental models that have helped your life so far. Look at different mental models. That's the starting point. And I would swear by this starting point. We just need to recondition our brain. We cannot be, as I told you, we cannot be looking at life from, if there's a salary cut, this is bad for me. If there is there's a withdrawal of a particular thing that we always regarded as perk, as benefit, that's bad for me. These are based on the old mental models, the mental models that are still existing in your and my brains. Probably these mental models need to go post COVID-19, because the things that we see, end of the day, I would go back to, again, when I talk about psychology, I would go back to Gestalt psychology. It is an old school of psychology, which essentially was saying the sum is always the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So when we look at life through these small parts, so we have a very, very wrong notion as to what the whole is. So time has come to redefine and to reinstall our brains with new mental models. If you were to ask me what, I would say just hang on. We would definitely be bumping into new mental models, but be ready to retool your brains with new mental models. The second, of course, would be how to fight this, would be absolutely understanding the concept of liquid knowledge. The one that we have always regarded as traditionally knowledge and have always been swearing by, I think time has come for us to look beyond. I cannot just be a mechanical engineer and believe that, well, I can be a great leader. I think I need to study something which is from the area of spirituality, from the area of biology, from the area of microbiology, and probably something a bit of astronomy. So we need to actually be looking. We need to be extremely malleable. And last but definitely not least, I would say let's not be prisoner of our own thought. You know what? That's not for me. That's not who I am. Essentially, because we have formed this notion of our own identity. I don't do that. That's not me. So this concept, when you say this is also an artificial identity, so we need to, time has come for us to, we need to understand what identity that we would like to not only harbor, valorize, and install, but if that's the new identity, what are the small things that to prove myself, I need to do, the small tiny bits. So these are the few mental models that you need to be installing in your brain for you to really, really look at life with a fresh mindset, with a fresh frame of reference, when we will again wake up to a new world after the COVID-19, when the pandemic will be dying. Maybe, I don't know when it is going to die. I believe, I keep my fingers firmly crossed that it'll die. When it dies, we need to be looking at life with this new mental models. That's all I would say.
Hi, Professor. This is Ankit this side. Can I ask a question?
Hello.
Yeah, can I ask a question, please?
I'm sorry, please. Can you be a little louder, please?
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so in the new norm of working that is going on currently, where leadership is also work from home and the employees
no,
also.
You're going down. I'm afraid you're going down. You're going down on your voice. Please Please keep your voice high.
Hello, is it better now?
Keep it please high. Keep it high, please.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
So, in the new norm of working, work from home is the new era. Do you think that will really impact the way things are being perceived by the leadership and the employees?
Oh yes, definitely. This is a question that earlier also I was asked, and I've been speaking with because you know what, working from home, we always thought this is definitely not. This is not a replacement for our physical presence. Of course, there are some industries where physical presence is non-negotiable. It cannot be replaced. But a lot of in the knowledge economy, what I mean by knowledge economy, the economy which is driven by brain more than more by brain than by brawn. This is going to be probably the new normal, working from home. And a lot of consulting firms, a lot of new age firms, they are rediscovering the strength of working from home. So maybe that will stay as long as they will see the value. I think as of today, probably for me, if you had to ask me as a teacher, I would definitely prefer a physical classroom. As I was telling few of my friends earlier before I started this conversation with you, I would always, to make sense to a greater extent, I would probably prefer a physical classroom. But since I can't make a physical classroom possible, I might as well go and develop the strengths that would get the best of working from home, and probably interacting with all of you the way we are doing now, the way I'm doing now. And probably as we do as heuristics, and we would learn new methods, better methods. And probably the day will come when we look back and say, you know what, this working from home is proving to be more productive, better, and more reliable, and probably foolproof. So I'm hopeful. I think this is going to be working fine.
So this has come as forceful action for all of us. But what happens is the divide between professional and personal life gets blurred. You tend to overshoot your boundary, and you tend to get anxiety. So all those leadership issues, will they turn more grave because today your employee is not in front of you, and you would be like having the worry that what is going on?
Very important. Thanks for asking this question. This is brilliant. Yes, the fundamental theories of motivation, the fundamental theories of why we do what we do, they would be challenged. They are getting challenged. At the same time, the fundamental principles of science behind the human behavior are still unchallenged. Probably that reminded me of profound founding. One research article that came out a few years ago, they say social ostracization, social isolation, when you excommunicate people, when you banish people, why that is painful? Because though neurobiologically it generates, it creates a kind of neuroscientific reactions that are there, that get created in the brain, are same when you crush the bones of people with equal amount of force. So what they're saying is, how do we actually, what do leaders do when there's isolation, there is ostracization, even if this ostracization is not forced, is not by will? Probably as I started my conversation with all of you, why constantly the leaders need to be telling people that they're loved, they're wanted, they're remembered. By doing that, even if remotely, they're ensuring that the isolation component, which is actually striking hard, which is hitting hard at the minds of the people that leaders work with, would to a great extent be healed, and they would feel connected. So yes, the fundamental principles of human science are still lying unchallenged. The methods, yes, would vary, definitely would vary. I'm sure nobody would be in a position to tell you for sure in absolute certain language as to what are the methods, but probably in the days to come, in the months to come, when we'll have another conversation, God willing, we'll have another conversation, I shall be in a position to tell you probably these are new methods.
Thank you for so much.
Gaurav Anand is asking, collaboration and association are very important. No, I think, is it a question, Gaurav? I'm sorry, I couldn't quite read this. Is it a question from you, Mr. Gaurav Anand?
Yeah, yes, sir. Hello.
What question is this, please? Please, can you elaborate your question?
Question is, first of all, thanks a lot for such a wonderful session, sir. And
Thank you.
I just wanted to know, I'm working with Cisco at present.
Yeah.
And if I want to collaborate a technology or associate for a new thing from Sweden.
Okay.
So how working from home will play a big role in that?
Wonderful, tremendous, $1 million question. See, Mr. Anand, what I would say is, what is true of physical interaction, a lot of that would come true of the virtual interaction. Your effort, as my effort now, frankly speaking, as a teacher, to be really to be successful with all of you, my effort that I would put in a physical classroom probably would have been, in terms of quantum, it would have been a little less. So now I have to be really conscious and cautious of so many things that I cannot see a lot of you. I cannot see your behavior. I cannot see your body language. I can't even run a check on what I said for the last 1 hour did make sense to all of you or not. So these things would be absent in a classroom. For a leader also, these things would be tremendously absent. So what the leader has to now do is to cultivate a very powerful set of habits, as Charles Duhigg famously is talking about the power of habits. So these habits, when you make those habits part of your life and they become part of your unconscious behavior, you would give out your best. And that's what I would say. So the principles that I have already laid down before you, at least the fundamental principles, the fundamental findings, the methods, just rely on these methods. And sometimes you just pretend that you are not virtually interacting with them. Just pretend that you are there, they are there, and do everything that you do when they were to be there with you. To a great extent, that would take care of the level of motivation, the level of collaboration that you would expect from all of them. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. That's great, sir. Thank you.
Sir, I think there's one more question by Sukriti Datta in the chat box.
Oh my goodness, I did not see. What, Datta?
Sukriti Datta.
I don't see. Can you please?
Yeah, I'll read it out.
Spell out the question, please, ma'am.
Definitely.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So he says, what would be symptoms of an individual that he or she can sense in oneself that can help the person to understand that there is loss of leadership abilities in that person?
No, say it again. What is? Sorry, I'm afraid I
couldn't
quite latch onto what you said.
Yes, definitely. What would be symptoms an individual can sense in oneself that can help the person to understand that there is loss of leadership abilities in the person?
Okay, wonderful. See, friends, I would say there is no magic bullet to this. This is a very important question, but I'm afraid there's no magic bullet in the known literature as of now. But there are few things, few indicators. As I was telling a while ago to one of our friends, how do you really sense a pandemic when there's anxiety, when there is unpredictability, and the language of unpredictability is spelled out, and of course, last but not least, when there is uncertainty. Similarly, when you see people not expressing, you see a lack of motivation in their behavior, lack of motivation in the language, a sense of detachment, and of course, the language is that of anxiety, written by anxiety. So when you see these things in the language, you see these things in the behavior, then you realize that you as a leader probably not are coming across powerfully, effectively. So you need to change your style, you need to change your gear. So these are the few things that on the face, on the surface, that you need to look out for constantly. And that's exactly what I said when I was talking to Mr. Gaurav Anand. When you are not able to see, you work from home, a lot of that is absent. So thereby, your effort to reach out to people needs to be more. I would say probably to look at them, even if it's virtually, to see them on the video, on the platform, to see their faces, when they talk, how they look. These are very, very important indicators of the style of leadership that you have adopted, whether it is working or not. So working from home, of course, it has given us opportunities, but also it has its own restrictions. It has its own constraints. As a leader, however, one has to really get over this constraint and try reaching out to people. That is the reason why you constantly, when I started my conversation, I say when you reach out to people, you go ahead and you enhance the frequency of your updating them, your engagement. In a way, they are directed at ensuring that you know the pulse, you understand how they feel. So these are a few things that one has to keep doing as a leader, to understand and watch out for the symptoms, as you said, of leadership not working.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any more questions?
Yes, there's a question that this new way of work or life would create stress. Of course, it would create stress not only for people but for the leaders. Everybody is a human being, so are the leaders. The leaders would be under tremendous stress. I would say, you know, friends, whether it is spirituality or neuroscience, the one thing they have so far, all the known literature, the research that has happened, they point to one fact: being mindful, practicing mindfulness. And believe me, it is not in the realm of spirituality and religion. It is in the realm of science now. A little bit of meditation is extremely important, friends. Being switched off from the rest of the world and being switched on to your own self, meditating is extremely important, friends, to maintain calm, to maintain sanity, which is extremely important when things are absolutely not normal as we understand in our known language. When things are normal, but not in the known language that we have understood so far. So please do meditate. Extremely important to maintain and manage your stress. It's extremely important. There's Dr. Hishmi Jamil Hussain, who's asking what really motivate people. Dr. Hussain, I would say all that I talked about do motivate people. When you are constantly telling people that they're loved, when you're constantly trying to understand, empathize, and express compassion, and you constantly telling them how they're wanted, these things are extremely important neuroscientifically to motivate people, to make them stay motivated. So these are fundamental. They sound small, but they're extremely powerful. So these are things that I've discussed. All the things that I've discussed in a way are oriented or directed, or in a way they're meant for the leaders to motivate people all the time. So all that I've talked about put together would work towards motivating people.
Are there any more questions from the participants?
Professor Ankit, again this side. Can I ask a follow-up question, please?
Please go ahead, please.
Thanks a lot for taking my question again. What has happened is, due to the uncertainty around, a lot of personal, professional goals of people have now been pushed into an uncertain future because of the practical reasons of it. So how does one tackle such personal issues? Because at an organization level, some decisions will be taken or are being taken which are painful and which need to be accepted by one and all. So any light on behavior, because there would be retaliation, agony, anxiety, everything adding to the stress that the individual is already going through. So how does one tackle situations like these?
Good. Thanks, Ankit. You know what? Yes. See, I'll tell you what. This is a wonderful time. I would tell you something which in leadership would not be. It would be quite counterintuitive. Procrastination is not bad. I repeat, procrastination is not bad. At times, it's great. And during pandemics, for leaders, procrastination is definitely not the method. But as far as my personal goals are concerned, I think this is the time. Why, as Adam Grant famously and powerfully said, this is the time for us to have procrastination in terms of our personal goals. Why I'm telling about goals, friends? You know what? This is again a counterintuitive finding leadership. When we talk about goals, above goal, there's something called vision. And when we get stuck on a vision, when we get stuck on a goal, our methods are the same mental models that we build over a period of time, which would help us achieve our target, our goal, and thereby understand the vision. So this is the time to actually tweak. This is the time to revisit goal and the target, and ask yourself, is it really the vision that I would now, as of today and tomorrow, I would value, I would have for myself? Start asking that question, and once you start asking the question, you definitely, that would lead you to the magic bullet, which I don't have. I'm sure you would have, because there's a personal magic bullet that would lead you to the holy grail, that probably what I thought as postponing, staving off my achieving my personal goal is definitely not so very wanted. So what I would say is, don't be stuck on the vision, be it your personal or be it your professional vision. This is I'm not saying this is because this is my own understanding. Recently I stumbled into a research article. There it was clearly stated that during the time of crisis, revisiting your vision, revisiting your goal and target, and asking yourself, is this goal, is this target something that I would still feel proud of come tomorrow? If the answer is yes, all you have to do is to wait, and mostly if the answer would be no, then you have nothing to lose but to procrastinate. Wait for another day.
Fair point. Thank you.
Yes, there's Miss Harshita Biswas, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. She's asking how important is spirituality, the factor of spirituality in leadership. Well, frankly speaking, friends, spirituality, as a teacher, I would always look at spirituality as being different from probably religion. Spirituality is all about to a great extent finding probably meaning all around, finding the reason why we are here, why the universe is here in the very first place. I would see a lot of spirituality in astronomy. I would see a lot of spirituality in studying something new. And this is very, very important. Thanks a lot for asking this question, ma'am. This spirituality is at the heart of leadership. Even during a crisis, he or she is the best leader who can actually tap into the crisis and find new meaning in that crisis. Because as human beings, we are born to find meaning in our birth. We are born to find meaning in our existence, and also we'll always seek out a meaning in everything that we do, and we'll seek out a meaning that ultimately when we die, it is extremely important. So for leaders, what I would say, spirituality, why spirituality is important, I would take it one step further. As a leader, this is very personal. All leaders, all of us, as a teacher, as a mentor, as a guide, as a manager, as a boss, as a state leader, or as a leader of a company, all of us need to have that thought in our mind. Can I really find some meaning in this pain, in this crisis? And if you ask this question, you orient your brain towards finding a meaning. And believe me, once you find a meaning, that's what I would say, that leads you to a spiritual aspect of leadership, and thereby making your leadership actually much more than what it is. So yes, my answer is yes, ma'am. That's what I would understand as spirituality. Find meaning in probably crisis, find meaning in the pain that we are all suffering, and of course, end of the day, the suffering that we are suffering is extremely important.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of the session. We have our secretary, Mr. Amitabh Bhattacharya, with us. Sir, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Professor Sarangi, for taking out time and for this session. I think it is a huge success because the numbers, we touched more than 160 plus people, and the amount of questions that we had on this session is also much more than what we had for the earlier session. Thanks, Professor Sarangi, for your for this session.
Thank you, sir. Thanks all my friends, and it was wonderful. Thanks, Mr. Bhattacharya, for inviting me.
It was our pleasure. It was our pleasure having you. We'll soon have you next time also on some other topic or something else.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks all my friends, and those of you who I could not answer, I would share my coordinates with Mr. Bhattacharya. Please take my coordinates and post your questions. As a humble and honest teacher, I would definitely do my best to answer all your questions. And as regards this presentation, I would share this presentation with Mr. Bhattacharya or Ms. Asmita, and they would in turn circulate this presentation to all of you. Thank you. Have a lovely day ahead. Wonderful
Hello, sir.
talking.
Thanks.
God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
There
sir.
are few more.
Thank you, Professor.
Ashmita, 1 second.
Yeah.
I think there are few more announcement. I will take this opportunity to tell others. JMA is now starting a new series called JMA Enriching Life series, wherein the first speaker is on this will be Shikha Sharma. I think that's on Thursday. This session is at the same time. Dr. Shikha Sharma is a well-known nutritionist. She will be speaking on immunity, health, and self-care in the era of post-COVID. I think please don't miss. Also, JMA will be coming up with a session on sustainability. There will be few quizzes where the prizes also you can win some prizes, online quizzes. I think there are a lot of activities. Please participate to all them. That's what. Now, Ashmita, over to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor, for a wonderful presentation, and to all the participants for your cooperations and patience. We have recorded the session, and it will be posted on YouTube as well. Please follow the YouTube channel of JMA, and also drop me a mail on the mail ID that I have mentioned in the chat box for the presentation and the recording of the session. Thank you very much. See you in the next session. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you, sir.